So today is May 17th, 2024. We are here with Sister Betty DalMolin of the Globe Second Ward. Thank you, Sister DalMolin, for letting us talk to you about some of your experiences here in the Globe Stake. But before we get to the Globe Stake, can you tell us a little bit about your background, where you came from, your growing up years?
Mhm. I grew up in northern Arizona in a town named Sholo. And I went to school in Snowflake, Arizona, and we had a temple there, a small temple at that time for the LDS church. And so as I graduated from high school, I knew I wanted additional teaching, learning. And so I enrolled at ASU in Tempe. It was known as Tempe Normal at that, or Mesa Normal. Before the year I went down, they changed to ASU, Arizona State University, instead of just college. And right away they said, "Oh, you need to be with the Lambda Delta Sigma sorority." Lambda Delta Sigma, LDS sorority for Mormons. So right away I joined, and it made a whole bunch of friends, because we met and had family home evening, and I got to know a lot of people really fast. That was a wonderful thing that kept me from being really lonesome down there. I had one girlfriend that I knew that was from Sholo that was LDS. But when we joined the Lambda Delta Sigma, we were in like Flint. Yeah, we had good times together.
Now, were your parents members of the church growing up in Sholo? So were your parents members of the church when you were growing
yes.
up?
Yes, they were. The McNeil side, that my dad's, they knew where the church was at. But the Stratton side, they were strong members of the church. But my dad, if someone needed help, everyone came to Jim McNeil, because he would help everyone. And the church was very proud of him, and they kept telling him, "You need to come to meetings more often, that you're living good." And he did. He went to women's widows and say, "Can I chop the wood for you?" and stock it up. And he had a good reputation. And when that's set in front of you, of doing good for people, it makes an impression on you. And my grandmother had a reputation, well, it was in the paper. It said, "Laura Stratton has delivered over 101 babies in the Sholo area. She's the only woman that delivers babies." And said she's known far and wide. And the Strattons were really strong in Snowflake. So I had a really strong Stratton side of my family. Not so much with the McNeils. They were ranchers and cowboys, and they lived a different life. They were sent to Old Mexico when the polygamy was banned. The church says, "Go to Old Mexico," because my grandpa had 5 wives. And he left the wives that had children in Utah, because they had their home and their fields, and the boys were old enough to take care of them. So he brought one wife with him and came to Arizona, and they had a lot of hardships. They went to Old Mexico and lived there until my dad was born down there. At,
Did you ever get to meet that grandparent?
yeah.
Did you ever meet your grandfather?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Was he still down in Mexico then, or had he moved?
He went down to Mexico and took his family. And my dad had no, he didn't have family then. My grandpa, rather. And my dad was born in Old Mexico. So they all went down. And they knew people, the Lily Whites from up north. And I can't think of the others. Some that was in St. John's and Springerville. And they had gone to Old Mexico. And so my folks met them down there. Yeah, it was
Interesting. Well, tell us how you ended up in Globe, Arizona.
oh. My husband to be, this guy went to the rodeo up there, and my girlfriend came by and said, "Betty, come with me." Why? I got a boyfriend. It's in that restaurant down there. I'm about the only one in Sholo. Will you go with me down there and go to meet him? And I said, I don't want to go with you down there and meet your boyfriend. Oh, please come with me, because he got his friend with him. And so I went down there, and we walked into that restaurant, and they got up from the tables when we walked up. Like, oh gosh. And then my husband, Frank, a guy was sitting next to him, another guy. They were all 4 guys and 2 of us women that was there. So Frank said, get up, get up. And then he said, sit here. It was love at first sight, he said, because he was just, can I take you home? And I said, oh, I have a cousin I have to pick up, and I have to go up to the schoolhouse to pick up my sister and take her home. Well, I can do that. We can do that. So he went with me up to the schoolhouse to the dance, and he said, well, let's dance for a while. All the girls was on one end and the boys on the other end in those days. And so when he got out, he went up to pay a ticket, and I went into the girls' end, and I told my girlfriend, I met a guy today, he brought me up here. Oh my goodness, he's coming my way. Here he comes. Oh. And he said, may I have this dance? And so we danced, and he said, may I take you home? And I said, I have my cousin I have to take home. So, but thank you anyway, but, oh no, I'll take your cousin home. And so, anyway, then I went home, and he knew where I lived, and I said, I better go in, and it's getting late. And he said, okay, all right. He said, I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Well, don't you work? Yeah, but I'm on swing shift. Mother, oh yeah. Honey, that man, that guy you was with last night, he's sitting out there in the car by the carport. He's been there most of the night. And I said, Mother, let's go back to sleep. Well, honey, I thought I'd tell you. He's been there, sitting there a long time. And so I went out. What are you doing? Well, I had to see you before I left.
Did you date long before you got married?
He asked me that day if I'd marry him. And every breathing hour after that,
What'd you tell him?
No, not yet. No, I don't think. Well, we got to talk. And he said, why? Because I'm a Mormon, and I want my children to be Mormon. Oh, yeah. I want our children to be Mormon. I don't want them to be Catholic. He said, I don't know anything about Catholic. except I don't like the way they throw that smell around. And he said, whatever you say. I said, well, we have to talk. I want my children to be Latter-day Saints. Well, you mean Mormons? Yes. Well, that's good with me. But don't ask me to be. Now, we'll take the children to the church. You can take them all. But don't ask me. I've got to think about it or something, like that. So we said, okay.
Now, maybe we can. How long were the two of you married before he passed away? Do you recall what anniversary you were up to? It was long. It was a lot of years, right?
Mm-hmm. Was it about 50?
Okay.
50 years.
And
Married in 51.
We had the 50th anniversary.
And he passed in 2010. So
Yeah.
that would be 59 years. Is
Mhm.
that right?
about 59 years. About
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and now in lifetime he never did join the church.
In a
But
lifetime, what?
before he passed away, he never did join the church. But after he passed, you had his temple work done for him. In fact, the two of you, you were sealed to your husband after he passed. Do you remember much? Do you have any feelings about that experience of having your husband's temple work done after he had passed?
A grandson did it, and he stood up for Frank, and a lot of the family, and Ben, and Royd.
It was Tyler.
What?
Tyler.
Tyler. Mm-hmm. They were all there.
How did that feel?
Very good, very nice. And going through the curtain, it was all very nice.
Well, let's take it back a little further to well, you got married to your husband, and actually, here's one thing. Now, your husband's name was Frank, right?
Yes.
And then you have a son, Frank, and you have a grandson, Frank.
Well,
where did you know where Frank came from? I mean, did your husband get named after somebody else, or?
who?
He got named after Grandpa. Grandpa's name was Frank.
Grandpa DalMolin. Frank Guarino was his name. And Frank didn't want Guarino, but he put Frank Rowland. They were friends with Roland Jones that used to have a ranch out here. Grandpa DalMolin rode with him quite a lot on roundups. And so he was kind of liked Frank Rowland. And so that's how he got named. So the children, we named one of ours Frankie Royd, R-O-Y-D. It was a unique name, Royd, because in going to college, we all gathered together as Latter-day Saints. We had family home evening together, and there was a guy there. I never dated him, but his name was his name was Royd Shumway, R-O-Y-D. And I thought, that's a really unique name. So after I left college and got married, and I told Royd, what do you think about, I told Frank, what do you think about Frank Royd, R-O-Y-D? Because his name was Frank Rowland. And so my husband said, oh, okay. And so later on, when young Frank down here, he said, where did you get the name Royd? And I said, well, all of the Mormons that was going to Mesa, we all got together. And guy there that I thought was really nice. His name was Royd, R-O-I-D, Royd Shumway, I think. And they said, I just thought it was nice. And Papa's name was Roland, so I thought, you could be Royd. So he...
And of course, your husband was from Globe, correct? Or from this area here in Globe?
He was what?
So your husband was from Globe originally, is that true?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Now, one thing that I'd like to ask you about, before we started the video, I said we might talk about what your first impressions were of Globe, and you began to tell me a story about the first impressions you had in Globe. I think it had something to do with driving by the pharmacy downtown. Can you share that story with us?
Oh, okay. Well, it was just a joke from us girls that was going down to college. And we'd say, go through Globe and now watch for the cowboys. They'll be at that first serving station or, or on the corner. And then we'd go, hello, cowboys. And they go and take their hat off and bow. And there'd be about 4 of us girls going to school. And
in the end, you got a Globe cowboy. I
did, yeah.
Okay.
I did.
What was it like in your first years here in Globe with your husband, starting a family? This is before the Globe Steak was created, but we had Globe Ward here. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, it was very heartwarming because I was on Central Avenue, and a lady there knew the family well. And so when she heard that Frank was going to marry a Mormon from Sholo, she called up the bishop. How would Mrs. Carville know that? She called up the bishop and she said, I want to give them a shower, the girl. So let me use the church. She was a very domineering woman. And he said, okay, so the first thing is, the first day in Globe, they said, your shower's today. And we went up to the church. And here's these people I didn't know any of them. My future mother-in-law was there, and the woman that gave the party, I met her. And the rest were all new. And I would open a present. Oh, this is so beautiful. This is from Rose. And I'd look up, Rose? Oh, she's not here. Oh, and I'd put it to one side, and then I'd open another. Oh, this is beautiful. This is from Sally. Thank you, Sally. No, she's not here. It was very awkward because I didn't know anyone. And they were so sweet.
Now, one of the things that you were telling me about before we started the video was talked about Norval Sherwood and how the effect that he had on the family, your family growing up. Can you talk a little about Norval Sherwood and how he was able to help you and your family out?
Yes. We, right away when we met Barbara and Norval, and we lived on the same street, just up a little ways over there where they lived at that time. And so we'd see them quite a lot. And we just got friends because they'd be to church and they were our neighbors. And so the first time my first child, I said, did Daddy come down and bless the baby?
There were
Royd?
some of them. Yeah, I think maybe.
Oh, my dad and mom would come down quite a lot and made friends with the Italians down here. And that helped a lot because they could understand more. And all the families down here that showed me a lot of love. They'd say, Frank got a girl that can sew. She makes these Western shirts, and she can cook, and she can make bread, and she makes pies, and she goes to church, and and they'd brag about me, and made me feel really good because they was glad to meet a Mormon. They didn't know what Mormons did. And when I told Frank, our children will have to be Mormons. Oh yeah. I don't want them to have to go to church and where they have that.
Now, did Brother Sherwood, did he baptize or bless any of your children?
Mm-hmm. Yes, all of them.
And
my dad
did one or two, but Norval did most of
but Norval did all of them. Every time I'd say, Norval, I need a child blessed, or I need him baptized. And one time he got up to the podium and he said, Betty, what name did you say for this child? Russell. Randolph Scott? No, Russell Scott. And everyone laughed, and I'm going,
did he end up getting it right?
yeah, he did. But I think he did it on purpose just to be ornery to me. But because Ardell was my neighbor in Cholo, and he loved to put me on the hot spot when he got down here. And he'd call me a nickname that no one knew but him and I.
And with Brother Sherwood, was he ever your home teacher? You know, or do you remember?
Yes, he's been our home teacher for a long, long time. Frank wanted him. We got a different one for a short time that Frank didn't want to even be in the room with him. He'd go in the other room, and I said, that's rude, honey. I don't care for that man. And so they changed it and sent Norval, and Frank was very happy about that. And he'd go to, if the kids were going to get baptized or if they got an award or something special. But every Sunday it was kind of hard. But he did pretty good, huh? Yeah.
So when you first moved down here, we didn't have a stake yet. We didn't have the stake center, the building we go to now. What was the old building that the members had to go to like? Do you have any memories of the old building?
Oh, yeah. When I came down, they were having church in a house on Main Street, on 60, coming down before you make the curve, a house on the side. And I went there one time. You know where the Chinese food place is, there on the corner? You know where I mean? On that first block, there was a lady there that said, you know what, I think her name was Brantley. I think it was Emma Brantley that was living there at that time, and she had let us have church in her house for just a couple of times. And then we started going to the old church there in up from the post office.
Tell us about the old church up from the post office. Do you remember much about that?
Oh yeah, we had a really nice church, but one thing that was impressive to me when we first got there, they said, we're trying to build a new church because we've outgrown this one and it needs to be changes made to it. You know where that is? By the post office?
Mm-hmm.
On that. And so they said, we're going to make pasties and sell them to build up money to buy a new church. And so they had Geneva Mounts. And Geneva was a member of the church, but her husband and her sons were not. Bob Mounts and how many other Mounts? Geneva and Bob and Bill. There was quite a few Mounts. And they donated the beef, and then they'd cut it up for us. Cut it in like 4 parts, and then we had to cut the rest and put them in what do they called? Pasties.
Did you help make those?
And we made pasties until we were almost blind. And then we had a boxer come from Salt Lake. It was LDS, and he came to our church, and he gave a little talk for a donation if they'd come in and buy a dinner. Who was it? And you're not old enough to remember, huh? He was a Latter-day Saint boxer, and he was well known by everyone.
And so he helped you sell some pasties?
Yes, and a fundraiser. We served a dinner. If they would donate $20, they could have the dinner, and then the proceeds would go to building the church. And he said he'd come down, and he did. And he met everyone at the door. And they'd say who he was. He's a ball player. I can't remember the name right now. I wish I have it in my notes somewhere.
So when the stake center was being built, did you or your family participate in any of the construction projects? Did you help with the building at all?
Yes, but not in. I know they leveled the property, and they had the backhoes up there. So they dig some of the foundation, what they could do, you know. But as far as building the church, they weren't involved. They're more earth movers, you know.
Okay. One thing, we can go back before the stake was created a little bit. The members here in this area before the stake was created had to go to Thatcher for a stake conference and other meetings. Do you have any memories of going to Thatcher?
I do. It was very hard. We had children we had to get babysitters for, and they had conference down there, Relief Society conference or general conference or primary things. We had to go down there, and it was hard to leave your children or try to take them with you. The inconvenience was very hard to be a member of that stake. The Safford stake, I can't remember what that was, the name of it. But we used to go down there for primary, if we were a primary teacher, we'd go down there for instructions. If it was a Relief Society teacher, we'd go down there. And finally it started changing, and we started going to Mesa. And they were more able to teach us better. They were more instructed more down there than here. Like Snowflake, I went to Snowflake for a while and to see how their churches were. And theirs and Safford were a little bit behind the times, but Mesa and Tempe were right on the Salt Lake, you know.
So what was it like when we had a stake here and you no longer had to go to Thatcher for stake meetings? Was that how did you feel when that happened?
We was thankful to go, but it was a hardship because we had to leave our husbands and our children during and not be come back until nighttime. And so we really didn't. We was appreciated though. They were very kind and loving, and expressed their appreciation to us to go down there.
So, I'd like to ask, were there any? So, you've been in the stake and in the ward here for many years. Are there any particular activities or memories that you'd like to share with us?
I think one of the ones that we did a lot of work for our stake center, and that was those pasties. We would go down early in the morning and roll the dough out and knead it, and get it and put the meat in there and the seasoning and everything and bake them and then deliver them. And it was just hard work. And the Mounces, Geneva Mounce was LDS, but the other Mounces, her husband and the boys, Bob and what was their names?
Joe.
What?
Joe. Joe Mounts.
Oh, Joe Mounts too. Yeah, the Mounces. And they did a lot because they rounded up the cattle and then they'd butcher them. Then they'd bring them up to the steakhouse and they'd cut them up so that we could cut them easier, not with a big saw, And we would cut it and bake those. And they'd smell so good. And I'd go up to the mine. I'd take Russ with me because he was just in kindergarten. I couldn't very well leave him anywhere. And so he'd ride with me. And we'd go up the mine and we'd go to the guard gate and we'd say, I've got pasties to deliver. Oh, do you have any extra ones? Oh, and they'd smell them and they'd say, oh, we'll take a dozen. Oh, no, I only have 10 and this is for so-and-so and so-and-so. I'd come back and say, do you have more? Because they want more at the mine, and take another trip up there because they would know the name pasty right away, that it was good.
Well, I guess a couple of things. One is, are there any other experiences that you thought of that you want to share? And the second thing is, would you be willing to leave a brief testimony with us?
I certainly would, yeah. I have been fortunate to have the best friends and the best people around me, and kind and loving. My father-in-law always was wanting to say, this is my new daughter-in-law. She's a Mormon. He couldn't say Mormon right. He was Italian, and he's a Mormon. And I took him to the Southern Pacific Depot because he was retiring as a conductor on the railroad. And he said, honey, will you take me down there? And I got to sign the paper so I get my retirement. And I took him down, and she said, fill the paper out. So he started looking at it, and he said, come here, honey, and help me. He's older, And so they asked him religion. And I said, they want religion. I said, I'll put, well, for heaven's sake.
Catholic?
Catholic. And he said, no, I'm not Catholic. I'm Mormon. And I said, Grandpa. And the lady said, what did you say? Mormon. And I said, LDS. Oh, yeah, I know that one, she said, so I'll put that down. So we got out of there, but Grandpa was so proud of everything, the children that were in programs, and that the people were nice to him. He'd just attend a few things. The Catholic father told Grandma DalMolin, you can't go to the Mormon church and partake of the sacrament or listen to preaching, but if children have programs, you can go. And if it's for a special program, or if it's for Relief Society for the women, or you can go, but no preaching. So she would come if there was anything, like that. And she was so glad to come.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share?
Your testimony?
That life is good. I tell you, the Lord knows what's good for us, and He helps us with our trials if we put ourselves in and know that He will help us. And He does. And He helps us when we help others. We reap the benefits. It's so good to find someone that you can do something for and help them. I've had quite a few friends that I feel a closeness to them because we have the same goals. When you're around, when we went to college, the girls all didn't have the same goals that the LDS women did, the girls down there, and that was hard. But when you live in a place like Globe, you hear good things. And the street that the DalMolins lived on, there was an elderly woman there, and she said when she heard that Frank was getting married to a Mormon, she called up the Mormon bishop. I don't know how she knew, because she was not even in any church, was she? Anyway, she said, I want to have it there because I want a shower for Frank's son. His wife's a Mormon from Sholo, and I want to use the church for a shower. So there I was going into the church, and I didn't know anyone. And the church was open, and Mrs. Carville was there. She was not LDS, at all. And about 10 women came to the shower, and the gifts were enormous. There was 20 at least. And I'd open it and I'd say, thank you, Ann Jones. Oh, she's not here. Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Mary Hayes. Oh, you're welcome. But I didn't know any of them, and it was embarrassing, but we had a lot of good laughs, and they were all really good. What a good neighborhood we moved into.
Well, thank you so much for visiting with us and sharing these stories. I think people remember your smile and the fact that you're always very pleasant, and you've encouraged a lot of people over the years, and many people have benefited from your example. If you just counted your descendants, that's a lot of people benefiting from your example, but it's more than that.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for visiting us.
Oh, thank you.